Hello folks, how's it going? It is Northern Exile and I'm back again for some more hobby nightmares. Can't wait to read some of what you've all been doing over the past few weeks. This is awesome stuff. Thank you very much. If you have sent in some hobby nightmares, keep sending them in to hobbynightmares@gmail.com. That is hobbynightmares@gmail.com. If you want some really cool models to use with your with your war games recently for a Grimdark Future or for OPR, anything like that. Well, OPR is Grimdark Future, but you know what I'm saying. Then head on over to our friends over at Minimaker. They are amazing people over there who do a lot for us. They make sure that Mr. North can build his OPR army for for Grimdark Future with some Space Marines that have massive, great big cannons. That's not normal. That just isn't normal, but they have the models on there, so I'm using them. Really cool stuff over there. If you want any sort of models to play with to play games in OPR or Trench Crusade or any war game out there that is available at the moment, you can use the promo code Northern Exile to get yourself 10% off your order at checkout. That is 10% off your order at checkout. They have absolutely amazing stuff. I can attest to it myself. Things like Battle Sisters for OPR, absolutely amazing models, and again, they're really good quality. They come out just like this. Most sites where you see files like this, they won't look exactly like this when they come out the box. I can attest, yes, they do with Minimaker. Really cool guys over there, so head on over and give them some love. All right, cool. Let's jump on to some hobby nightmares. I have some other parts of that ad to do later on in the week, which I will do, but I just wanted to get the week off to a good start. Anyway, first one is from Darren. All right, dude. I'm not going to use your full name. You've told me to, but I'm not going to because that would be doxing. And that's not very good. He says, "My name is Darren, and you're welcome to use my name. Thank you. The people involved in the story will never take interest in the hobby, nor does anybody in her circle know about it. So it's fine. Okay, that's fine. My hobby nightmare came back to mind when you talked about your latest trip to Warhammer World, the very place where my own nightmare happened. Here's the story. I had a friend. Let's call her Lucy. Lucy was taking part in a graduation ceremony in Derby. She's from Australia and had no family there to attend, so after talking with my wife, I offered to go and support her. It wasn't a huge deal, as I live in Ireland. Lucy was delighted and asked if there was anything I'd like to do whilst in England. I told her I'd love to visit Warhammer World and sent her a link so she could see what it was all about. The store, the exhibition, the restaurant and so on. She suggested we spend at least half a day there to take pictures and see the models, since her event would be a long one and it was only fair. I happily agreed, but since I knew she wasn't really a fan, I suggested we go on the last day of my visit so we could focus on her first, and of course, she agreed. Well, that's good, a little reward for yourself for being a good guy. On the first day, everything was great. The graduation ceremony was longer than expected, but I did everything a good friend should. I looked after her things, cheered when she got her award, and recorded it so she could send it home to her family. You're a good man. You're a good man, Darren. Well done. Over the next few days, I did everything I could to make her feel special. I paid for dinner at a restaurant she really wanted to try, and covered her petrol and so on. Okay, this is cool. Really awesome. It is sounding like this is more of a boyfriend-girlfriend thing. I'm wondering whether she'll get the wrong idea. Wrong end of the stick. Finally, on the last day, we went to Warhammer World. When we turned into the area and I saw the Rhino outside, my heart jumped with joy. We went into Bugman's bar for food, which was great, and then headed back to the shop area. We reached the section where the Titans are displayed, and I was in awe, taking photos and admiring the detail. Another group of people came over and started talking with us. We had a lovely nerdy chat about Titans. After a while, my friend said she was going to the restroom and would be back really soon. Fair enough. When she returned, I was chatting with the small group. They asked if I was going to the exhibition, and I said, oh yes. They said they'd see me inside. Then Lucy said, oh, that was very nice of you. I paused, confused, thinking she meant talking to the strangers, but no. She meant it was nice of me to be kind to disabled people. This is not going the way I thought it would go. Now, I had noticed that one of them had a prosthetic leg, but that wasn't really relevant. They were nice people who shared my hobby, and that was all that mattered, so I explained that to her. I said, well, these people share my interest in Warhammer. As long as they're nice to me, I'll be nice to them. Everything else doesn't really matter, you know, people are people. She looked at me oddly, then said how noble it was to talk to those people, quote unquote. I froze at those words. She was a nursing graduate, and yet she saw them as victims, not people. I felt low, really low. that someone I considered a friend thought like that. Okay, so I'm not going to go into details, but I've been involved with nurses over the past couple of days, just general stuff to do with my overall health. I will tell you this: like they will give you a lot of really good advice. They know what they're doing, but also they've seen a lot of stuff, and sometimes healthcare workers have to disassociate that personable side to make sure they can do their job, right? And this may be something that she's done, especially if she's going into a career in nursing. She maybe has been trained to see victims. She's been trained to see, this is a problem to solve, right? Because I'd much rather have a nurse who's looking at me as a problem to solve than a nurse who's looking at me like, with too much empathy. You know what I mean? Like they don't really want to hurt me or they don't want to fix me. They just want to make sure my feelings are all right. I really value the nurses who straddle that line. When I've ever dealt with a nurse, they've been like that. They straddled that line of caring and compassionate. They will allay your fears, but they won't lie to you. You know what I mean? They just won't lie to you. They'll give it to you straight. But they will allay your fears, and if they can do, and if they can't, then they'll give you all your options that you can go with. So I think this is what this is. I don't think this is some sort of malicious thing on her part. I think it's just how she's been trained, to be honest with you. Anyway. But I was in Warhammer World, model heaven, so I tried to let it go. After a minute, she asked if we could leave because she was bored and didn't like engaging with those people outside of work. Again, I get what... Yeah, I know it's off-putting, man, but, like, this is somebody who works very hard, and she's from Spain, right? Yeah, so maybe her English isn't up to speed, like, isn't, like, quite there. Like, she can speak fluent English, but there... certain phrases and connotations and words aren't used properly. I think we need to cut this girl some slack, is what I'm saying. I had been there for about 40 minutes, 30 of which were spent eating. I sighed and said, "Sure, but let me grab the models I wanted." 5 minutes later, we were driving away from Warhammer World. Dude, just insist on going to just say, the one thing I really wanted to do was this exhibition. Can we just do that? I'll grab the models, then we can go. And I bet she would have gone, "Oh, okay." Anyway, she suggested we spend the last few hours at a nearby park. I said no problem, trying to stay positive and telling myself it was my mistake to bring somebody uninterested in the hobby to Warhammer World. She then complained about how much I'd spent on my models. I told her they made me happy. Building and painting them would give me weeks of fun, so they were actually worth it for me. She told me that if I gave up the hobby, I could go on holidays to nice places. I replied, "We just left a nice place. For me." I've literally had this conversation last week with a friend of mine. Me and the missus have been thinking about going to Rome for a while as a little getaway, like a nice little romantic getaway. And we've been putting it off because we like staycations as well, and they cost a lot less, and we're just having fun, right? And he was really, "No, you should take it to Rome, do this, do that, spend this money. And I was just like, dude, not everyone's like you. Some people are just content and happy, you know what I mean? And you won't know that until you've almost had it taken away from you. Then you'll understand. You know what I mean? Then you'll understand just how much you value those things in your life. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyway. As we turned into the park, I noticed a familiar car. When we got out, I saw some of her friends sitting on a bench. They'd been waiting for her. So I spent the last bit of my trip with her friends before heading to the airport and leaving England. That was where my story ended. Until recently. When I came home and told my wife what happened, she was furious and swore it wasn't over. Okay. Now, 2 years later, my son is old enough to be developing an interest in Warhammer, and at the end of this October, my wife is taking me back to Warhammer World and insists we do everything we missed out on. And Lucy, she's gone back down under. Alright, yes, she's from Australia, not the... Well, you did the right thing, man. Maybe you were a bit like... how do I put it? You weren't like, you didn't stand up for what you wanted to do enough, but at least you're getting a happy ending with your missus. That's the absolute main thing. I was going to put these models on because they're not from your story, they're from somebody else's story, but they'll be coming on in a minute. If you recognise these models, you will know that these are yours, and that, yeah, you should be very, very proud of them. Anyway, I'm going to stick these on there with some orc stuff. Excellent. And let's go to our next hobby nightmare, and it is from... John, how's it going, dude? To sign off, John is back with a long story that will reveal whether a player is a beginner, making beginner mistakes, or just that guy. And it all happened a few years ago, so perhaps there are some rusty details. Too few models is the first subtitle. It started as preparation for a tournament where both Warhammer Fantasy and 40k were being played. Age of Sigmar hadn't been released yet. I was going with my High Elves. Several members of our club were going to that tournament, including somebody who was just starting up with 40k, we'll call him Dave, and he was going with Grey Knight, so a man of culture so far. To properly prepare Dave for the tournament, I played practice matches with him. I already knew how to use my High Elves for the upcoming tournament, so I preferred to give him some tips during these practice matches. Grey Knights were considered top tier at the time. One of the first tips I gave him was not to get too comfortable with the 2 wounds per model, and that he was giving far too many upgrades to his models. He had far too few models on the table for that. I also explained that models died immediately if their weapon strength was double their toughness. Yeah, if the weapon strength that hits them is double their toughness, yes. Regardless of how many wounds the model had. He initially got this tactic from me. My knob bikers, orcs, each held a different weapon, allowing you to distribute wounds before one model died. I explained to him that I only needed to spend 5 points per knob, and that I only did it for that one unit. He did the same for his Grey Knights for each unit, and his upgrades were often quadruple in points. That's too many points per model. Far too many. On a bit of a side note, now that I'm talking about my knob bikers, they also include a Pain Boy. The Pain Boy is easy to make with bits from the knob set. However, what should I do with the Grot Orderly? It only had a model on foot, and 3D printing wasn't really an option back then. I felt that the Gobbo had to run after the bikes on foot. I'll show my solution by adding a photo, picture number 1. It's an old photo and not very sharp. It's mostly truck bits and green stuff. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's cool, man. I love how he's riding on. Yeah, he's got his own little bike. That's cool. That's cool. I love it. What's your other image here that I can see? There we are. Cool. Awesome. Great. It was only a week before the tournament, and Dave didn't update his list. He claimed he didn't have the models either. Very normal for a new player. My first tournament was also a bit of a mix of models that I had, but it didn't matter to me at the time. It's fair dues. Next part is rock bottom. On to the tournament itself. I don't remember exactly how my tournament went. One of the matches was over quickly though. I was completely beaten. I was the perfect opponent for me. It was the perfect opportunity for me to check out other tables and see how Dave was doing. He too had been beaten by an orc player. I briefly spoke with this orc player, partly because of a compliment on his 3 battle wagons. He made one large model from 3 separate models, keeping them close. It looks really cool. In picture number 2, it was a mobile fortress, very orky, and I loved it. This thing, very cool, very cool. Absolutely great. Dave was just complaining about it. He said it was cheating. You're supposed to use the model as Games Workshop designed it, he said. I explained to him that his opponent's model was only a disadvantage. The way he plays it, I said, the battle wagons have to stay together, and it's also much taller than a normal battle wagon. The orc player nodded when I said that. Dave didn't have enough anti-tank units in his list. Even against 3 or maybe 2 normal battle tanks, he was no match for his opponent. Dave was dejected at the end of the tournament, because he was at the very bottom of the 40k results. I tried to cheer him up by telling him there was only one player below him who had 10 points less. There was one player below him who had 10 points less. Unfortunately, that didn't help. That's the reserve player, John. He doesn't have any painting points. When I looked at the list again, I saw a 0 in the painting points. Dave himself didn't have any painting points either. However, I left it at that. If I told him that his 4 painting points out of 30 wouldn't have made a difference, I only rubbed it in, and that his painting is also bad. Oh, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you did the right thing there. Sometimes it's best to just let a friend stew for a bit, and let him just, be in his glumness for a little while. Sometimes it just is what it is. Pink paint is different from blue paint. Given Dave's disappointment, I wanted to help him further. As you can read, there were already some signs of that guy in here somewhere, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt as he was new. Hindsight is always easy after all. The next tournament was announced immediately. It was a doubles tournament, and Dave wanted to start a new army. Demons. Coincidentally, I was also working on a Demons project, so we decided that day to form a team for the next tournament and register in advance. The plan was for me to play with my Khorne with Dave and his Tzeentch. I wanted to take Dave's painting to a higher level first. We agreed to start with pink horrors. Dave indicated he wanted to paint them blue because the rest of his army was also going to be blue. I told him that was no problem. I was already painting my own pink horrors and wanted to teach him my techniques anyway. Instead of playing, we planned spending on an evening painting at a game club. I'd already told Dave to bring at least one ink and 2 shades of blue, one light and one dark. I demonstrated how I applied the first layer with my dark paint, so he could do the same with his dark blue. The next step was inking, followed by the light pink for me and the light blue for him. Unfortunately, a problem arose with Dave. I don't understand what you mean. You're working with different colours. I want blue, not pink. I explained to him again how to get a nice effect with skin. I said, the effect that I use is 2 pink colours, and you can do the same with 2 blue colours, so it doesn't really matter. This works with both pink and blue, with 2 green colours for orcs and 2 flesh colours for people, etc. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, he still didn't get it, and stopped painting after 15 minutes. Okay. Then I'll just keep going, doing it my way and paint everything blue. I'll see if I can play another round of 40k. Unfortunately, I only had painting supplies with me. I finished what I was working on and chatted with the others at the table, and I still had a great night. Well, it seems like you're going out of your way to make sure your friend has a good grounding in the hobby, do you know what I mean? Dave's whole plan revolved around one model, is our next subtitle. The next step is making lists. Fortunately, that's easy with my Khorne. It's all about close combat and killing, of course. With Tzeentch, it's different though. It's mainly about magic and magic items, of course. I've gotten the name of Dave's magic item and what it did directly. I do know he put it on a demon prince. Sorry, I've forgotten the name of Dave's magic item and what it did exactly. Okay. I do know he put it on a demon prince who already had a lot of points with other upgrades. For that item, you roll a d6. On a 3+, that item did something very powerful. On a 1 or a 2, the demon prince itself gets a fair amount of damage. That's why I warned him when I saw the rest of the list. I said, 2 units of horrors and some support next to this HQ is a bit low model count in your army, my friend. You put so many points into the demon prince, and you're hoping that one dice roll will do it? Unfortunately, he didn't get the hint. I also relied on Tzeentch for anti-tank. I mentioned that to him as well. Unfortunately, Khorne also has little anti-tank potential. I'd like to show you why you need anti-tank. Shall we play 2,000 points next week? Your Tzeentch against my orcs, I said. Dude, you're doing the best you can. You really are. A week later, I played 2,000 points on orcs, including a Stomper. There's no better test for anti-tank units. Of course, Dave immediately grumbled. A Stomper? You should have mentioned that sooner. Then I would have adjusted my list accordingly. When I drafted the rest of my boys, I said, well, at a tournament, you also encounter lists with multiple knights. Super heavies are simply a part of this edition, and you have to be prepared for them. I don't have a knight, so this big boy will have to do. Trust me, 2 knights is even worse. You can guess the outcome of the battle. Unfortunately, Dave didn't really get the hint and didn't adjust his points list for the tournament. An adjustment would have been easy. He could have borrowed some of my Tzeentch, but he just refused to learn. Dude. Okay. So this reads like somebody who just wants to put as little effort into learning 40k as possible. And if that is you, that is completely your prerogative. It's up to you. But you can't then blame the game for not treating you very well. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not how this works, you know? Anyway, our next subheading is have fun with beer and meet your opponents. On to the tournament itself. Considering Dave's list, I expected to finish near the bottom, so I wasn't aiming for good results. Mainly to have fun with my partner here. However, Dave had other plans. He still believed his OP magic item and expensive demon prince would ensure victories. I didn't feel like explaining everything again, so just got on with it. The first battle was against a list with many deep strike terminators. My Khorne with his high AP weapons had an answer for that. However, our opponents mainly focused on shooting at my Khorne because they didn't see Dave Zinch as a threat. And unfortunately, I lost 0 to 20. Oh my god. That's a pounding. During this battle, the painting points were also assessed. My Khorne was already completely killed, so I asked about the painting by the tournament organizer. He said, "I'm having trouble judging your armies, John. The difference between the painting is miles apart. How do you want me to do it?" I told him to assess it honestly, like all the others. Then you have Dave and me judged separately. Sorry, what did he say? Then you have Dave and me judged separately, and then divide it in half. See photo 3 to see our armies. Okay, so you basically told him to divide. So he said to you he would add you up together and then divide it in half. Okay. Okay. Well, those don't look too bad. You see, from that distance, they don't look too bad at all. Anyway, during the sorry, my friends, I'm having trouble going back to where I was. Cool. The first battle ended quickly. We still had about 45 minutes left. Dave left the table disappointed. I discussed the battle with the opponent and had drinks. We also talked about other things in life. I made the best of it. The second battle, we had to face 2 knights. Here we go. Right, you're gonna be proven right here. Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do about them. Dave complained half the battle that knights are completely overpowered. We finished this one quickly then as well. Dave left the table disappointed. I discussed the battle with the opponents and had drinks. We also talked about the other things in life. This part of my story is a copy and paste, but this also shows it happened in real life, I guess. I don't remember the third battle. I was a bit too drunk. With how it's going, I don't blame you. We lost that 1-2, and when I looked back at the scoring, same thing there too. Finished early, an angry Dave, and another chat and drink with the opponents. I don't think I've ever drunk so much in one day, not even in my HEMA days. And I have to tell you, those guys can drink. Yeah, that's a Middle Ages martial arts. Yeah, they can drink. One of my opponents also asked, "Listen, man, you two are polar opposites. Playing against you is amazing. He just kept complaining and calling our list OP. However, we also lost twice. Otherwise, we wouldn't have played against your team, you know?" I couldn't help but say yes and amen to that. This was the last time I'd teach him anything. A real that guy. I will never do a doubles with Dave again. But that's all for now. Have a great day and keep making videos. I listen to them all. Thank you, John. Cheers, mate. I'm going to give you your name another go. Joan. Right? Sort of like English Joan. Let me know if I got it right. Alright. Our last hobby nightmare of the day is from... you've not told me to call you anything else? So I'm going to call you Cody. Alright. Cool. He says, "Hey North, a newer viewer here on the channel. Well, welcome, my friend. Welcome. Hopefully you're doing well. I fell hard down the 40k rabbit hole when I got into Space Marine 2. I started off collecting Tyranids. Quickly learned that my wallet couldn't afford them, and then I switched to collecting Dark Angels and Blood Angels. I slowly started collecting an army, building and sometimes even painting my minis. I'm not the best painter in the world for sure, but it's mainly the amount of time it takes to paint that stops me from painting all of them. It took me around a year before I got out of my own head and took the leap of reaching out to people at my local hobby store to start playing some games. I was new to playing the game, but I had a lot of time I spent trying to learn the rules and watching battle reports so I could feel confident enough to actually play without butchering the gameplay. My first game in the shop was an absolute blast. I played a 2v2 with me and Imperial agents against Iron Hands and Imperial Knights. Did we play all the rules correctly? Absolutely not. Did we kill the giant stompy robot the Knight player was brought? Absolutely not. Did my unit of Sanguinary Guard with Dante and my unit of Jump Pack Intercessors with a Captain deep strike into the middle of the board, fail all their charges, then get blasted off the board? Absolutely. But it was still a fun time, full of learning experiences and just having a laugh with some friends from the hobby. Over the next month or so, I kept learning the rules of the game, learning from mistakes, and just having a good time playing with new people and having fun. We then had an Escalation League start up. It consisted of smaller games designed for newer players in the hobby. The first month started off at 500 points, then went to 750 points in month 2, then 1000 points for the final month. it was strictly going to these games not to win prizes, or I was strictly going to these games not to win prizes, but just to have some fun. I could only show up to about half the games anyway due to my work schedule, so I was taking it even more casually than the other players. Even though there were prizes at the end, everyone for the most part was playing to have fun because everybody was in agreement of not trying to make it a super competitive tournament. Due to the small points limits in the games, everybody for the most part was running infantry, and then maybe adding a dreadnought or a tank and transport towards the end of the season. Then we had who I'll call John. John was a friendly enough guy, really talkative, but maybe a little socially underdeveloped. I have family with autism, Down syndrome, etc., so I'm used to being around people who are a little different, and I try to be friendly enough with everybody and give everybody there the benefit of the doubt. The first time I see him is at the 750 point level, and he had brought Imperial Knights. He's a different person than a Knight player at the beginning of the story, however. I say hello, and I talk about how scary and intimidating it would be going up against his army, because especially to newer players, an army consisting of giant robots is intimidating, and requires a completely different game plan than normal. He laughs and jokes about how anybody he goes up against is buggered. I hope I used the right word. I'm from the US, and we don't really use that word here. He got matched up against a buddy of mine with salamanders, and I play a match with a sister's battle player. That's not too bad then. I end up having an absolutely fantastic game with a sisters player. We were neck and neck the whole time, and I only won by a hair due to finally learning how to use my Sanguinary Guard unit. Dude, that's the best feeling. Like learning how to use something, it finally clicks for you and you win with it. The guy I was up against was just a wonderful opponent to go against. Just great sportsmanship and a friendly guy. My buddy at the other table was not having such a great time. He had to sacrifice most of his army in order to hold objectives, and ended up winning because he had a single ancient holding an objective at the end. John, the whole time, had just been talking about how he was going to win and kill his entire army the whole time, and ended up complaining at the end because he lost to a single character, which most people think is weak because they don't have good attacks or anything. For reference, the Ancient is just a Space Marine that holds a flag and helps his units hold objectives. That is indeed what they do, yes. We all go home, and everybody is being rather friendly in the store's Discord, thanking their opponents, but there is one guy who was actually calling stuff as he saw it. He talked about how, for the most part, everybody was great, except for one or two people he saw that weren't being the greatest of opponents, not being very sportsmanlike, and how disappointed he was to see it in the store. One which he was talking about was a gotcha moment in a game, I believe, but I don't blame my opponent for it at all. I'm newer, and I understand how easy it is to forget, and not everybody knows everything about your army, and to also not understand what might have been considered a gotcha moment. Even then, when I had selected the unit to shoot at, he told me that the character had a 2+ invulnerability save, and let me select a new target after telling me, so I don't see anything to worry about. Okay. The next day, I was looking over my rules, still trying to learn more about my army and stratagems I had access to, and I realised I had been using a stratagem called Smokescreen on units I wasn't supposed to use it on. I thought I could use it on units with the grenades keyword, but it turned out it was with the smoke keyword. As soon as I realised my mistake, I put it out on Discord that I'd buggered up the stratagem and to give my opponent the points for the win. I wasn't sure if me playing that stratagem wrong would also change the outcome, but I also knew the game was too close to not factor in. Additionally, me beating my opponent had knocked him down in the rankings, and I was just playing in the league to have fun, since there was no way I could win prizes with my schedule. I was also a fan of Vanguard tactics and the whole ethos of being a great opponent, so it just seemed like the right thing to do. Yeah, man. Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a really nice thing you've done. This is great. I show up a couple of weeks later to get them to the next match I'm able to make it to. We're playing 750 points, and I get paired up against John and his knights. Despite what I had seen last time with him, I'm still friendly with him and he's nice to me. Once again, I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. We get the game set up and the match underway. We start off and I'm explaining what units I've got, who's starting in reserves, what weapons models might have that they are playing as different weapons. I'm a fan of building my models how I think they look cool and playing them as whatever weapon I think is good. Okay, I don't mind that in a 750 point game because you can remember, but As long as you're okay with me asking you to remind me which is which, you know what I mean, that's fine. But in bigger games, it might get a bit unwieldy. Different enhancements, and any gotchas I think they might have. He goes over his 3 models, and we get the game going. He asks me who my warlord is. I say it's the Blood Angels captain with assault intercessors. He says awesome, and I think nothing of it. I deploy him up towards the front so I can get him to engage ASAP. John has his models push up, and he's not even attempting to hold his home objective, which I think is a bit off. But assume he's just trying to hold the middle objective, since you can't score until battle round 2 anyway. He shoots some of my guys, but nothing catastrophic happens, since my units are in cover, etc. My unit comes up and makes a push. Captain pushes up, and I have his unit charge one of the knights. They, combined with my dreadnought shooting, are enough to kill one of his knights in turn 1, which is a huge win for me. He just thanks me for... What? He just thanks me for pushing my captain up and kills him the next turn, which is expected. Yeah, but thanking your opponent going, yeah, thanks Doom, that I'm going to kill him now, isn't it really a nice thing to say? What wasn't expected, however, was his army gaining a 5+ feel no pain alongside their normal saves because he killed my warlord. I was caught unaware for sure, but still, I'm trying to be a better player, so I just blame myself for not asking earlier why he was asking who my warlord was. The game goes on, and I play purely for points. There's no way I'm going to take out his knights, and I push my models up and charge them to keep them off of the points. So far my plan is going perfectly. He's also scored about 5 points to my 30+, so there's no way he can really come back to win it. He still keeps playing on, and I'm just trying to have a good time, so I keep going. I will say though, it is a little tough to have a good time when all of your models are being blasted off the board and you can't do much about it. Throughout the game as well, I start noticing some weird things. He claims all of his knights have certain keywords and can move through terrain instead of around it. They have a 5+ invulnerable saves, etc. I don't think too much of it because I'm not that familiar with the Imperial Knights Codex and don't want to drag out a game when the store is close to closing time. Finally, we get to the end of the game, and I have a single brave intercessor who charges the biggest knight he can see, and he goes out in a blaze of glory. Then John and I shake hands, and he tells the organiser that he won the game. Confused, I asked him how he won the game if he only scored 10 points by the time I got tabled, and there was no way he could score enough points to pass me up with 2 models he has left on the turn, with 1 turn left. He said, he has tabled me. That's an automatic win for him. No, it isn't. Not in modern 40k. I believe it should be this way, but I also listen to people who want to disagree with that. It's fine. I get both sides of the argument, basically. If you... Okay, in 40k, do you think tabling your opponent should be an automatic win, and you should, like, disregard victory points? You know? Like I tend to fall down that category, because I think the exceptions to the rule are far more exception, based. Or... do you think, no, it doesn't matter if you're tabled, it's how many points you have, and that's what makes you win the game, because that means even if you're getting battered, you can actually keep on the table and maybe eke out a win. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm more swinging down to the second one, because it means both people have, like, something to play for. Anyway. Okay. Okay. Shocked, I just look at the organiser and say I had no idea that was a win condition, and I was fairly certain that the only win condition here was that we have enough points. The organiser agreed with me, saying that the only way to win was by points in the game right now, but he apologised for not making the rules clear enough at the beginning and said that we could both get the win since we both won in a way. We thought that we could. Good, yeah, that's fine. Before you start talking shit about the organiser, no, I'm not. I think that's a fair thing. Yeah, it's fine. Neither of you knew, so it's fine. Yeah. Before you start talking shit about the organiser, I wanted to say that the organiser is actually a really cool dude. He was the Imperial Agents player from my first game. However, this is a really casual tournament, like I said, and that he is not a store employee, but another player who took initiative to get a league going. Also, John was the only person in the whole league who thought you could win by wiping out an opponent, so I do believe that the organiser had made the rules clear enough at the beginning, but there we go. I'm happy enough with the outcome since it's no factor to me, I get the points or not, but it still rubs me the wrong way how he could mess up the rules that badly. However, I started looking more into the Knights rule since I was just a bit suspicious about his claims at this point. It turns out he was playing quite a bit wrong. His small knights weren't able to go through terrain. It was just a big knight with a specific keyword. And on top of that, they're supposed to take a battle shock test, I believe. They also were not supposed to have an invulnerable save in melee. It was supposed to be in ranged combat, which is a big factor since I do play a melee army. I brought this up with him the next time I saw him. Not argumentatively, just, hey man, I think you were playing the rules wrong, I think it's supposed to be this way, and he took it well, I think. The next time I see him, he gets matched up with a new player who's playing a Chaos faction. He has the new player give up after turn 1 shooting. I felt really bad for him, but everybody else who had shown up, which was only 2 of us since not many people could make it that night, had already played with him. Fast forward a couple of weeks again to yesterday. I played the tournament organiser as we've been waiting to play each other for a while, but hadn't had the chance. We get along well and even talk about the plans for the next season. He's playing Adeptus Mechanicus, and once again, it's another fantastic game. He's a great sport, and it's a close game, but he ended up getting the win in the end. John, however, is playing a buddy from the first game I played, as well, who's playing Iron Hands. We're on 1,000 points each, and John actually beats the crap out of him points-wise. It's not until after the match we start talking that I learn the full depth of how John is a really scummy player. It turns out the whole tournament, John had already had multiple of his wins completely turned over due to his gameplay. He was constantly getting rules wrong, and not even small rules but really large game-breaking ones. For example, he had an ability to re-roll a single hit, wound and damage roll every time his model shot. He changed that to full re-rolls of hits, wounds and damage. Wow. This was absolutely massive, especially when the model in question is an Imperial Knight. The standout for the game last night was the secondary objective. The mission rule for the Knight was each objective was 5 points, and secondary objectives would be from one of your army's combat patrol. Simple enough, right? Wrong. John was supposed to select a primary objective worth 5 points to hold, and his opponent was supposed to select an objective worth 10 points. John selected both objectives himself, and of course, scored an obscene amount of points. Then the cherry on top, him playing rules wrong, which he'd already been told directly how to play them correctly. At this point, there was no more room in my mind for doubt. With the amount he gets wrong repeatedly, it has to be on purpose. You can't go a whole season getting wins revoked left and right and corrected on how to play your army and it be an accident in my opinion. This is all I have about John and his big stompy robots for now, but the next season starts in a few weeks, so I'm sure I'll have a bit more to add to the story after that. We decided to ban Knights from the league, and as a result he will be playing Harlequins, which honestly is going to be another pain in the ass for everyone since nobody knows anything about their rules here in the shop. Also, the store owner decreed that we're not able to ban anyone, which makes sense, since if anyone was going to do it, it should be the store owner. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and if you get to this point, thank you for reading through all of my rambling and ranting. Also, a fun fact, I was quickly proofreading this. I was reading it in your voice, so think of it as you will. Haha, alright, cheers, man. Thank you, Cody. And yeah, dude, let me know how that works out for you. I'd love to see how that works out for you. Let me know, and how the tournament goes, how it all goes from here. I love you all long time. I'll speak to you tomorrow for some 40k Rantage. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you very, very soon, alright? Have a good one. Bye now.